Can we have a beautiful round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Let's bring the energy back in the air and let's get the session started. With that, Mr. Sanghvi, over to you.
Good afternoon. Always a tough one before lunch, and I know that you're probably expecting a lot more in terms of sort of what you can take before a good meal. But I think what we have here is one of the first of its kind digital first brands. And when I say that, it means that these are brands which have been built in the last 2, 3, 4 years, and most of their marketing is predominantly using digital as a platform. So I'm going to try and sort of give a little introduction. So right from sort of Dipanshu, who sort of leads a company called Mama Earth. Zapfresh. And what essentially in terms of has been perhaps the largest challenge for you, if you can just spell that out, maybe in the last 2, 3 years of the journey?
Thanks, Kushal. We are basically a fresh meat brand operating out of NCR. We started about 4.5 years back. What we found, as a problem and opportunity at the same time was customers today, are, still, buying from the traditional sources, and how do we basically change that and bring, meat at doorstep was the premise of the whole project. And that's how we started, from a small apartment, and today we've grown to about 300,000 customers, doing about 1,700 transactions a day. So the growth has happened digitally for us, and what we've seen, a major growth driver is that how do you standardize experience for the customer, and right from your supply chain to demand to delivery and servicing at the end of the day. So we have basically done a lot of hacks initially when we started. These and always being capital efficient company, you have to think of newer ways to reach out to a customer, to
Sure.
acquire. There were a lot of struggles initially because we were trying to change a behavior from buying from a butcher store to a online place. So I think what worked with us was the emotional angle, where we have understood that the customer is looking for a trustworthy product and service.
Sure.
And how do we basically keep at it was the modus operandi and the objective. So a single-minded focus on building trust is critical, and through various ways, whether it is through branding, whether it is through direct customer acquisition online, standard social media channels, and then basically engage further with the customer. It's the engagement part which plays a key role in acquisition and retention for the new age brands. That's how I think we are inherently doing things as compared to traditional brands.
Fantastic. Chirag, I think you're in a sort of sweet corner in terms of, I think, suddenly the world taking to male grooming and sort of so many companies putting all their big bucks there. And still, we spoke this morning that given that our lead captain Virat Kohli decides not to shave and sort of therefore sort of changes the way sort of grooming is in India. A thought for you in terms of sort of how do you break out from the typical stereotype of selling sort of blades and grooming in the way it was done before to what you're doing, and how I think that space is sort of crowded as well now, about 4 or 5 players. So what's been that challenge?
We run Bombay Shaving Company, which is, as he mentioned, a men's grooming brand. We've been in the space for 3 years now, one of the leading players in the market. I think what we do is we, of course, are customer-oriented, but we try to follow the process and build the culture in terms of, because our space is evolving at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
And when I mean space, I mean digital as a space, because the way technology is evolving and also the user adoption is there. So just to give you some data points, India, in 2018, we were at, I think, 500 million users online, now at 700 million users online.
Wow, fantastic.
So that's the growth which is happening. And in technology, the changes, both macro and micro, are happening at a rapid pace, which leads to having a culture which is experimentative in nature. So, as a culture, we like to welcome bad news and say good news will take care of its own. So that's one big cultural challenge which we've taken for ourselves, and which is different from established companies that, how do you instill that as part of the culture that it's good to experiment, good to fail,
Right.
go out, do quick efforts. Because, so as I was discussing that Instagram is doing away with likes. How do you take that as an opportunity and go out and experiment?
Right.
If you don't do that, if we don't do that as digital first brands, then we're losing out. And I think that's where the sweet spot lies in terms of putting your CAC down, improving.
Is it fair to say that you're able to take faster decisions because this is your second startup journey? Or sort of if you were not perhaps an entrepreneur before, would it have been different?
I would say I would agree with that, but internally, so there is always a bias for action. So even if we are confused with something, we'll lay out the experiment and say, let's go out and test it. Even if it is about making a new product, we'll go out and make that product, test it, and see what the results. So don't get opinion in a data fight is what we believe in. That's what thrives for us.
Fantastic. So a company which is sort of giving sort of a large company like Johnson & Johnson in some way sort of boardroom sort of scuttles in terms of what do we do to kind of battle a home-growing sort of brand, and one which sort of after a few years has one of the investors also becoming the face, and this is Shilpa Shetty for sort of Mamaearth. And what's been, I think, some of the things quickly, if you could say that, within almost less than 3 years, you're almost turning profitable, which is a great insight for a lot of marketers sitting in the room as well.
So I think I'd go back and start with how we started this journey. We are Mamaearth. 2014 is when me and my wife, we were blessed with a baby boy. And that's when we realized how large a change in your psyche having a baby in your family is, right? Because you become so much more careful around the choices that you want to make, right? And that's where some of the insights started kicking in, right? So one, the fact that we had smartphones in our hands all the time, and our ability to search and do a lot more research was significantly higher, and we are seeing them in numbers. So if you look at very recent BCG report, almost 86% of consumers are checking at least two data points before making any FMCG decision, right? And this number is at about 5 for high LOI categories like beauty and baby. Right? So people are clearly researching on internet, and when you research on internet, you do figure out that there are negative trends around certain brands which have been going on, right? And that scared us as parents, right? We wanted to provide options which were completely free of harmful chemicals for babies in India. And that's how Mamaearth was started. And we're Asia's first Made Safe certified brand. We got that messaging out. And that said, the fortunate thing for us was a lot of these investment bubbles, right? Like housing, and some of those had happened in 2014-15.
Right.
Which were pushing everyone to build companies and value chains, right, where you can clearly see a path to profitability. And given I myself come from a middle class background, मतलब वो वैसे ही पैसे खर्चने में दिक्कत होती है. तो I mean for us frugality almost came as a way of life, right? And the beauty was I've spent about 11 years in the FMCG industry. In fact, just before starting up, I was heading Coca-Cola for India, where my marketing budget was about 150 crores, right? And we were like throwing money here and there, ye event, ye party, ye Coke studio.
I like the word throwing money.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right? So that's how things were, right? And suddenly from that to this place where it was like, no, how does this measure? And what will it do for the brand, etc. right? So because we also did not have too much money.
Right.
And secondly, we were very clear that we wanted the right kind of people, right, to be our early adopters, right? If your start is not correct, right? If brands are like humans, right? You're the company that you keep, right? If you're seen with the right kind of people, right, you will be perceived as the right kind of people. Right? If you're seen in the hands of wrong kind of people, that is a start that you don't want. Right? So we were very clear that we wanted specific targeting, right? through which right kind of people adopt us. And a combination of the fact that we any which ways didn't have money to reach out to a lot of people, right, and the fact that we wanted targeted people, and led us to be a lot more frugal, and that has been our DNA. And what has helped is the fact that digital now allows you to do that. And you can effectively rarely create micro segments and micro moments, right, through which you reach out to the right kind of audiences, you convert them, you create content with them as they become your loyalists, and then you further take that content out through platforms like Instagram and even possibly in future TikTok. Right? But yes, so I think that's the reason why we've been able to turn tide towards profitability. Yeah. Yeah.
So fantastic to sort of hear that in terms of just within less than 3 years. Just going back to this entire concept of digital first in a sense of things, but you're still kind of piggybacking on the Amazons and Flipkarts and many others. And so to that point, in terms of sort of I think what you do, Dipanshu, is sort of I think given the ecosystem is of products which are therefore more kind of extremely perishable, kind of ordered, no shelf life, and what's that, how does that really change from a digital ecosystem to sort of be right up there, and how do you mitigate therefore a lot of those challenges in terms of kind of saving on those losses?
So I think that's one of the entry barriers also in our category, because very early we realized that we need to be extremely efficient, and as Varun mentioned that frugality has been a thing with us as well. Right. So we've been very conscious about how do we spend the money and how do we mitigate such risks right from the start. So we've invested in technology. We've looked at having demand forecasting engines to have right metrics in terms of stock levels, and how do we manage SKUs around locations. So I think this is something which we sought in the first 2 years of our operations, where we ensure that the wastages are lowest, and because that affects the bottom line. Sure. And it's very, very critical for us to not bleed there. So today also our wastages are 1.5%, which is very low considering it's a fresh, chilled, perishable business. And one of the ways we do it is we do have some restaurants and hotels which we work with. So some part of the inventory can be liquidated to partners. So we, with retail, with doorstep deliveries, consumers, we look at the same day produce, and then we have other partners to liquidate some of the stock.
So what percentage of your business is sort of consumer or say trade?
About 75% is consumer.
Okay.
Remaining 25-30% is B2B.
Do we have anyone in the audience who's bought from him? Anyone's bought meat?
We are NCR based, so yet to be launched in Mumbai.
People from Delhi as well.
Yeah. Sure.
The entire panel here is from Delhi, so I'm assuming that some of the audience are also from Delhi as well. Okay. So a question for sort of you back is, given that sort of you moved from, I think, what your line of business was to kind of broaden it, was it a conscious decision to kind of move away from that sort of specific, kind of audience of just sort of child sort of care to now a larger personal care, and therefore, how easy is it therefore for a company which is a startup to kind of move in that space, and do you have dynamics of sort of funding which came in that time as well?
So I think I'll break this into 3 parts, right? So one, why did the movement happen, right? So from the start itself, we were actually very clear that we wanted this to be a platform brand, right? This millennia belongs to platform brands, right? Platform brands are brands which stand for a why, right? And not for a what, right? Last millennia, you would think of, brands like, let's say, Sunsilk, right? Which stood for a what, right? Which was, hey, we sell hair care, right? This millennia belongs to brands like Dove, right? Which stand for, hey, we believe in real beauty, right? If you believe in us, right, you buy from us, right? And then it doesn't matter what we make. Right?
Okay.
Apple, right, is a great example of that. Tesla is a great example of that, right? you would buy from these brands. Xiaomi is a great example of that, right? Xiaomi exists to democratize technology, right? If you believe in Xiaomi's belief, right, you'll buy from air purifier to phone to whatever, from Xiaomi. Right? So we wanted to be a platform brand, right, where people believe in the purpose that we have set out to do. Right? And once you have built a platform brand, you can effectively sort of get into multiple categories, right, as long as that purpose and functionality is met. Right? So it was a longer term strategy to always sort of expand. Right? What started happening was, given we were in childcare, but babies...
But does it kind of change in terms of the way consumers see your sort of marketing thought process change? So
yeah, so I'll come to that, right? So we were selling baby care, right? And unfortunately, babies, at least at this point of time, don't buy directly. And
sure.
I'm sure it'll come soon. I'm telling you, 5 years, they'll themselves be on Amazon, right? My kid is 5 years, right? And anything that we tell him, no, कि ये नहीं है, तो मतलब हमको बच्चे में हमारे our parents used to tell us, no, this is not available, right? This you won't get in the market, right? They say, order from Amazon, no. And there are no excuses anymore, right? So our buyers were parents, right?
Sure.
So now these guys themselves are large users of personal care, right? And they were saying, hey, I'm buying into your beliefs, right? I'm buying into these claims, right? Why are you not selling products to me, right? Because I'm any which way is coming to your website, I'm buying from a baby, right? If there are products which are there for me as well, I would love to buy from you, right? So that thing led us to do product innovation and expand into adult care. Right? Of course, on the consumer side, the couple of things that we had to do, one was to get the mix right? So how do you differentiate around packaging, right? What is adult BIS, what is baby BIS, right? Second thing that we had to do was targeting, right? So earlier we were only looking at a person who has baby within the age range of 0 to 3, right? But now the whole world was our TG possibly,
sure.
right? Of course, with the core being that parent still, right? But there were other layers which were outside, right? So we had to shift our targeting, right? And the third thing that we are now in process of doing, right, is expanding and communicating that proposition and that purpose harder. And earlier, that purpose was more functional in nature, which was about toxin-free products. Right? Now we're taking it to a level where we can stand for a cultural point of view, and that's what will then shift the needle and make us more relevant as a brand to all cohorts. Right?
Okay.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Chirag, I think almost getting to profitability, in certain categories profitable, at a stage of being a VC, entrepreneur before, you may want to exit as well. So what are kind of first asks from, say, for example, a company who's kind of willing to put the money, and so say Procter & Gamble came to you, or someone else did come to you, or Dabur, or whoever came to you, and said that, how easy was it to kind of become part of that ecosystem, if there's any thought at all?
So Colgate
or would you want to even kind of just sell out immediately as well?
I think that's an interesting question. Colgate is one of our existing investors. Colgate-Palmolive is one of our existing investors. And I think the decision which they made, I think they also were cognizant of the fact that what we're doing, they as a company want to learn.
Right.
And hence, our ask was, apart from money, was that can we continue to have the same freedom to run the company and be digitally first and continue to do those experiments, agility. That's I would say probably is the biggest ask apart from money. And I think we've been lucky till date to have been given that kind of freedom in terms of, everything right from what kind of products do we launch to how do we launch, what kind of endorsement do we do, what kind of celebrities we get on board, everything. I think
So what's the typical sort of journey for, say, a new product to get launched at the company that you sort of are really putting out products so fast? What's the typical sort of life cycle to start and get out there?
So that also I'll draw a leaf from how technology companies function. So technology companies are known for agility, and they'll ship a feature every fortnight. So they have fortnightly sprints, and they'll typically gun for shipping a feature or a product every fortnight.
Right.
That's how we also think. So we don't think that we are a technology first company. Technology is a backbone. So we'll implement technology everywhere and then look at shipping products every fortnight. So we'll have a consumer insight, build a prototype, and then ship it every 15 days. And then the next team will test it, find out newer insight, whether it's working, whether it's not working. And then it'll go to the
So if I can ask you, how large is this data analytics ML team? Could you be able to share that number with the audience?
So I would say our entire, one of our key pillars is that we take decision-making basis data.
Yeah.
We have a technology plus ML/AI team, which is of 6 people now.
Okay.
Not very large, but what we try to do is that we'll make internal dashboards which will automate all of this. So we will, for example, make a dashboard which will give out, actionable decisions for anyone to, make decisions out of it.
So would you therefore use a lot of tools from the outside world to help you create tech for you, or would you still want to kind of do it yourself?
We do it yourself. I would say we use, in our entire tech stack, we would use 30% tools and we would use 70% tools which are customized for our internal purposes. Because I think that's where one moat is. That's where as a company we build defensibility. And once you start to build these proprietary tools, that's where you start to see a lot of insights. So for example, even in running a Facebook or a Google campaign, we typically would keep a cap on 20%. Our budget should not be on automatic campaigns more than 20%. Because the insights come when you run manual campaigns. How do you automate that so that a single person can do both is how we will use technology as a backbone and then keeping costs lower. So that's how.
So keeping costs low, using tech pretty much regularly, looking at insights. Back to you in terms of sort of this morning, sort of we spoke about the fact that you have like such a large, over 50 million sort of people looking at your platform up on sort of TikTok, for example. So how do you take decisions faster that saying that this is the platform to be chasing, or let's put all the spends on this one?
I think again, experimentation and being quick is at the heart of any startup. Right? And especially if you're building a digital-first company, you have no choice but to be ahead of the curve, right, on all platforms, right? Be it TikTok, be it Snapchat, be it Pinterest, right? Which might not be large today.
Sure.
But there clearly have to be an opportunity for you to play on. Right? And you need to figure out how to play on these platforms before everyone else, right? So in a way, it's strategic to you, right? Because even if any one of them ends up firing really well in future and you're already doing well on them, that is where you get a really disproportionate curve. Right? And that has happened with a lot of brands who were able to ride Instagram wave early or were able to ride Facebook wave early. And when those platforms had organic abilities and were giving you that kind of push. So for us, it's about, we are very clear we need to win on all of these platforms. Right? We need to keep doing experiments till we win. Right? Of course, the size of those experiments is what we ensure is the minimum possible size at which significantly, significant results can be generated, right? Basis which you can then scale. Right? Till we don't see results coming, we don't scale, right? But we continue experimenting.
So food as a category has a lot of, I think, hate coming out from social media more often than not. And we've seen, especially the last couple of sort of months without taking names, a lot of political parties saying that India is a very vegetarian country, meat is not good. Have you tried in any manner kind of putting out any of that as message or content back on social platforms at all?
Well, yes, I did, wrote a, letter once to Modi when he came in the power to how not treat meat as, an under carpet thing, because I don't know, contrary to all these beliefs and all these comments, India largely 70% is non-vegetarian. I don't know how many people know that. So we consume, majority of India do consume a lot of meat. We are one of the top beef exporters, like #1 export company, business which we do globally. India tops that. We are one of the top 5 in shrimp exporting. So I think these are still, community-led,
No, what I was trying to say is
movements.
that would you, for example, take a tough stance on a social platform, and have you done any of those activities?
Yes,
we've seen Zomato and a couple of others make a statement saying we're all for the nation, or
Yeah.
religions
So
coexist.
we did, a small campaign in print recently where we were, trying to compete with vegetarians. So just to get more virality. So the creative was all around, chicken or ghas foos. So, what would you choose? So this was a little,
Was that your first print campaign?
Yes, this was a first. So we started
So
with.
basically, when you're saying that when you have a sort of an outrage coming in, the better way to do it for a digital brand is still to leap on print and say that we're all kind of neutral.
Yeah, so I think it's grabbing eyeballs, and that's what we care for as a young brand where we are experimenting and we're looking at.
But we still say we're
getting
digital
virality.
first and we won't use mass media, but
No,
we
we
still
do.
go to.
We do brand building. I think digital does help in a lot of direct customer acquisition, but brand building has to happen where the customer needs to see the brand enough to have that recall. This helps in retention as well. For example, if one customer is buying once a week, once he sees the brand in different ways, I think that repeat rate goes higher. So there are, we do believe in branding. Today, in terms of our budgets, we do spend 40% of our budgets in branding, which is radio, print. So all sort of branding, all sort of acquisition.
You're funded.
We're trying, yes, we are funded.
So just so that everyone knows, so
So I think we are all funded here. So
no, what I meant is sort of funded in a manner that the funding can sort of say that we're happy to take a full page Times of India.
No, not that. I mean, as he said, that we do these small
Experiments. With print as
Correct.
well.
And then we see that, what is making sense, and then you expand it from there. So profitability, frugality, all that is very core to us. Unlike cash burning. So it's not that.
Back at the print ad, did you get any data or insights back from Times of India?
Well, we're still on it. So once that is over, I'll share that insight with you. There were some, people who have posted online about, there is, so they're making, virality about it. Okay, is it right? Is it wrong? But any publicity is good publicity, according to me. Until the time we're not offending anybody, it's just cool. So I think we were just on the borderline there.
So you're obviously sort of taking data pretty much regularly from, and you're a company which is completely refrained at the moment, at least from any sort of traditional format. So how important, therefore, is it to kind of literally sort of use that so fast, so quick, and what's the kind of best sort of way as learning to sort of the audience here in terms of using that data for decision making for business?
I think when we call ourselves digital first brands, we're not saying we're digital only. Right? There will be a life stage for the brand, and where you're, and it's effectively a financial decision, right? So television offers you a certain reach. And a certain acquisition and cost of traffic as well, right?
Sure.
So if you look at companies now which have optimized largely on their digital reach, like a Zomato or a Swiggy, or which are digital companies, in fact, right? But they're now doing a lot of mass media, right?
Yeah.
And where there is clear modeling present, that also gives them the right awareness spike, right? So if it's a funnel where awareness, consideration, conversion is what you're looking at, right? Tactically, traditional media does play in the awareness side of things. But it's just about figuring out when is the right time for you to do it. And that's where the data and technology comes into play.
So we're running short on time.
Sure.
Just one last sort of question for each of you guys, starting with you. So amongst the sort of growing sort of digital platforms, where do you put your biggest bucks? Still with YouTube and Facebook, or you sort of gravitate towards Spotify, TikTok, and many, many others?
Of course, in terms of percentage.
No, just one quick answer, one word.
Yeah. So Facebook ecosystem followed by Google ecosystem, right? So
So it's still Facebook,
Yeah.
Google. What about you, Chirag?
For us also, so bucks go to Facebook, Google, but of course efforts are more towards the newer channels.
Bucks go there, efforts go there. Okay.
Same.
What's the kind of, so when you say efforts, when you sort of Is it therefore just time, but the money goes there? How does time and money kind of come together?
So in terms of searching for newer opportunities, as he also mentioned, that's where it's going to come to in terms of newer platforms, Spotify, TikTok,
Okay.
because the organic reaches are high, they're growing as a platform. So that's where, you offer yourself as guinea pigs and see that can you get inordinate reach and
while,
hence lower CACs.
Google and Facebook have got clear winner products, right? So DPA is a winner product, right? Or a shopping is a winner product, right? Some of these platforms don't have a clear winner product as we speak, right? So you have to experiment
I
a
don't
lot.
hear Amazon from any of you guys.
Of course, I mean, you didn't talk about it, that's why you don't hear it.
Okay.
But
Discussing more
Amazon
D2C,
is a sales channel for us, not just marketing, right? And it does feature in top 3 spends from a marketing perspective for us at least.
Great. So time's up for us, and we're going to just try and have 1 or 2 questions if we can. Open the house. If we do have any questions, happy to take for the 3 fantastic founders, or 1 question at all. I hear Shiny there.
All right, so we have 1 question. Shiny or here? All right.
Hello. Considering all of you are 3 brands which are really new, what do you think was the tick that for credibility made a difference to you, to your consumers?
Sure. In our case, actually, credibility was a very important criteria because we were getting into a baby care market, which is a high involvement market. So the way we constructed the brand itself, we were very clear we need to have, if we were ourselves just saying we're toxin free, it'll be brand speak and not a lot of people would want to believe that. So we worked with madesafe.org, which is a not-for-profit organization based out of US, right, which certifies brands to be completely free of harmful chemicals. Right? And we were the first brand in Asia to get that certification from them. Right? And towards early period, probably first 18 months of our communications, that's the one line that we put out in all our communications, Asia's first MadeSafe certified brand, right? Which is what drove our credibility.
So for us, we work with, farmers directly. So again, on a similar line where, chemical-free, preservative-free meat is, something which we have been claiming. So a healthy lifestyle, what you're feeding to your kids and the family has been, a center focus for us. And we have built capabilities in-house in our supply chain to show more transparency and build more trust, leading to credibility. That's what we have been doing.
I think we have stood, so we have a sharper, very defined focus in terms of what the brand stands for, which will eventually lead to credibility. We've not gone towards the mass codes which are present in the market, what the other new age as well as established brands go towards, like Setwet, Beardo, etc. We've stood for equality. We've stood for that, all men need to be celebrated. And I think we've stood that for 3 years, and now consumers resonate that in terms of what we bring out in products also, and in terms of our communication across channels also.
I think time's up. We don't have any questions right now, but everyone's here, and if everyone's got questions, we're happy to take them outside over lunch.
Thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause to thank all of our speakers, all of our panelists as well? And we're going to request you to please come together for a group photograph.